Grandma loved Ireland. She always said there were only two kinds of people in the world. She taught me this when I was a wee boy. The Irish, and those that wish they were.
The sharing of stories can spark laughs, tears, and fresh perspectives.
My credibility, my integrity is a swipe of a plastic card. What happened to my human's connection?
It's rude to stare, and I can't touch him, especially for females. We can't touch them.
This is Democratic Visions. Here's producer Jeff Strait.
Writer, black feminist, and civil rights activist Audre Lorde once wrote, "It's not our differences that divide us. It's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences." Last November, the Hennepin History Museum, with the help of storytelling coach Maren Hinderly, gathered 11 Minnesotans from different backgrounds. Their mission: tell a personal story that has been inspired by a simple object that has had resonance to your lives. It could be a shoe, a candle, a Jell-O mold, anything. Maren coined the program's name.
Keys to homes in our hearts. You know, one story leads to another, and that's what I think. I think once neighborhoods start to hear stories from other neighbors, they're going to go, oh, that reminds me of a time when I...
Yeah.
This is the second of 3 episodes from the Keys to Homes in Our Hearts program. Featured storytellers are Mark O. Lynch, Barb Arkin, Pao Toy, and Jonas Spector. But first, Jeff and Maren share a few thoughts.
Welcome back, Maren Hinderly. Now, Audre Lorde also wrote some other things.
She did.
Yeah, okay, give me one.
Well, I know you're going to like this one.
Okay.
She said, a revolution is never over.
Oh, that's right. It goes on and on and on, doesn't it? Yeah, things
Well,
never
and it's a
change.
play on words, too.
Sure. You're a storyteller yourself.
I am.
Why are you enthusiastic about this? It's not a sport, it's not a hobby. What do you call it?
It's the way we understand ourselves and the world we live in. You know, there's another writer who said, the world isn't made of atoms, it's made of stories.
What is so appealing about telling stories in front of live people?
Oh, it's an act of creation because it's never the same. Even if you tell the same story to the same people, it will be a different time. You know that from the way you shoot this program. And it's so respectful. I know one wonderful storyteller by the name of Ken Fight who would not begin to tell a story until he sensed everybody in the room was ready to hear it and wanted to be there.
Well, I agree with Ken Fight.
Yeah, he just sat there.
That's why I don't like to go to dinner with people, because there's a wait help interrupting the situation. People are talking about food. They're not talking about stories.
Oh, well, food is a good story. Are you kidding?
Yeah, but you know.
Oh my gosh.
I have weight issues, you know. So.
Well, that's a good story.
But I kind of like a captive audience in a nice room, like at the Hennepin History Museum, or say in a cigar lounge.
It's a mistake to think that your audience is captive just because they're there.
If someone is interested in telling stories in front of live people, I would imagine you have to do it quite a bit before you get good. In that respect, it may be a little bit like stand-up comedy, where you don't get really good until you've done it over and over and over again.
Well, there's one thing you really have to address, and that's the judge inside your head. What I mean by that is that we educated people that we are used to deciding, oh, that was a dumb thing to say. I wish I hadn't said it that way. Or, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to do that one again. Oh, no. You know, we have this tape running inside our heads that's criticizing what we're doing before we even do it. and it's inhibiting. And it does not allow us to be free enough to share the images and action and characters that are a story for the people who are listening.
So you're trying to tell me something here?
I am not trying to tell you anything that you don't already know.
Well, I'm very impressed by the next storytellers we're going to present here that you helped coach.
Good.
Let's look at them.
Okay, great.
My name is Arkin, and I moved to United States from Pakistan. Sometimes I have to say, there was a time I used to say Pakistan, which is next to India. Now I have to say Pakistan, which is next to Afghanistan, because people understand in different ways. So anyways, so I came here, and it's been a while. Like the first time I came here to do my master's, and then went back to Pakistan, came back, and started living here in Minnesota 2006 onwards. And this keepsake has a bit value for me. What you see here is a vendor, roadside vendor, selling fruits. He is a poor vendor in the sense that this is his total asset. Every day he gets that many boxes, sell it, save a little bit for his children and home, get new boxes, sell it. If one day there is a strike, someone is protesting, and he cannot sell, his children will be hungry. So, how that became so important that I was seeing him, he's a poor guy. At the same time, I felt he's so rich. And how that whole thing happens, because you take things sometimes for granted. Everything is coming to your life, you say, oh yeah, that I deserve. You don't even think about it. So one day, when I came here to the United States and seeing the credit cards, at that time credit cards were like you have to pay annual fee, $10 is kind of a privilege. And I was like, oh, I need that card. I need to buy things with my credit card. Finally, one day, my application got approved. I got the plastic card, and I was like, wow. Now I can swipe, now I can buy anything. But I knew that I have to pay, just so you know, yeah, I was not getting carried away. But so one day I was in the grocery store. A grocery store I go every day. Every time by, they know me. Hey, how are you doing? And then I bought the groceries, went to the counter, and how does that work? You guys know? Have you been with your mom buying and she swiped the card? And you get the groceries? Okay, that's what I was trying to do. I swiped the card, and oops, it didn't work. There is a problem. I said, try it again. And I tried again. It still didn't work. And all of a sudden, things changed. The cash register, the gal, she was trained to start looking away from you. She has been trained to say, don't recognize you. All of a sudden, you are nobody. And he's like, you know what? You can come later on. I can put it aside. But with less, no eye contact. Because she doesn't want to recognize you. She doesn't want to have that kind of a pain of not giving the grocery to you. So, if I take this cookie away from you, you will be happy? No. Really? That's what happened. My child inside was crying. My grocery is going away. Luckily, I had one more card. Swiped. And things were okay. And she was happy. And I was happy. But at the same time, I was sad. I was thinking about this guy. I was thinking about this vendor. He used to be in the neighborhood. He didn't know anything about my home. I used to just get groceries, fruits from him. He used to have, in the mango season, he used to have 150 varieties of mangoes at different times. That's what Pakistan is famous about. But when I go there, and I bought the fruits, and then he said, oh, by the way, I have mangoes. These are the real good ones. And I said, you know what? I don't have cash right now. He said, did I ask for money? No. Yeah, so he opened the trunk and he put the box. And he said, money will come. Who cares? I know you. And that's what makes it so important. Although I got the groceries, but I was sad. Although I got the groceries, I was thinking like, I am so much, kind of my credibility, my integrity is a swipe of a plastic card. What happened to my human's connection? Well, he did not have anything. He knew if the money doesn't come, what will happen to his kids? But he was generous. He was rich. And because I was credible, I maintained that as a human connection, that he knows that this person is not going to run away. So that human connection is so important. And that told me a story like how a person can be poor but so rich. And how sometimes you have to surrender your credibility to a piece of plastic just because there is no human connection. And that goes in the society because we are losing that human connection. So that is so important, and this I wanted to share with you guys.
Hello, my name is Mark O. Lynch, and today I'd like to speak about me Irish grandma. Grandma loved Ireland. She often referred to it as the Emerald Isle. She'd often invite me over to supper. Now, Grandma could be a most ornery sort, but she was also a delight. Lots of fun, always a hoot. Sometimes after supper, she would invite me in to sit with her. Now, she always said there are only two kinds of people in the world. She taught me this when I was a wee boy. The Irish and those that wish they were. Now, as a wee boy, I was proud, beaming. My chest expanded. However, as I got older, I began to wonder, don't other people like themselves? But I didn't dare ask Grandma. She'd take a swing at me. I recall one time she took a swipe. As I backed up, she almost hit herself in her own nose. It was 1960. The time of the Troubles in Ireland between the English and the Irish. Much death and sorrow. But I didn't let it bother me. Now, Grandma always dressed up for supper. She loved her jewelry, gobs of it. She had beads around her neck, green and white. She called her Irish rosary. She always wore rings on all her fingers, gold bracelets on both wrists, and long hanging earrings, often made to look like shamrocks. I was always amazed how she could move around so quickly with all the extra weight. She also had silver dollar dollops on each cheek. She painted her lips bright red above and below the lip line, and she had deep creases in her cheeks that filled up. As that wee boy, I wondered if she'd once been a circus clown. But I didn't dare ask Grandma. Indeed, it was kind of scary. A bit ago, I asked her about the upcoming presidential election. It was 1960. We would have a new president of the United States, either John Fitzgerald Kennedy, a Catholic and a Democrat, Or Richard Milhouse Nixon, a scary Protestant and a Republican. Teasing Grandma, I inquired, who are we going to vote for? And I jumped back. I knew the swing was coming. When you would be invited into Grandma's house, it truly was like stepping back across the Atlantic Ocean into Ireland. Her room, her apartment, was filled with Irish jumble. Of particular pride she took in one picture that hung on the wall of Farney Castle. Farney Castle had been owned by her great-great-grandparents back in the 1850s. Now, after I asked Grandma who she was going to vote for, I said, teasing her, no, Grandma, I'm serious. Who are we going to vote for? She says, you can't vote. You're only 15, boyo. I know, Grandma, but you can. I want to learn. She said, well, she got serious now, no more kidding. He's Irish. He's Catholic. And then she got up on her tiny toes and said, and he's good looking. After our Irish supper of corned beef and cabbage with potatoes, of course, we were off to St. Paul in the IRA, Irish Republican Army meeting. The British may have messed with Ireland for some 400 years, but now they would have to deal with me Irish grandma. Join me if you wish or will in wishing Grandma Erin go bra. Erin go bra. Ireland forever. Ireland forever. Thank you.
My name is Bao Toy, and my keepsake is a portrait of my mom and my dad Ram Toy and my mom Ngem Chia. I can't believe I picked cans when I was 5 years old. So every morning when I woke up before I went to school in kindergarten, I had to pick cans with my parents. My parents and I and my family were refugees from Cambodia, and we escaped a really brutal genocide that killed 2 million people. And when we came here, we first lived in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, and we were able to pick cans for a living because you can redeem them for 5 cents in the East Coast. So we were really, really, really poor. We were on public welfare and food stamps. And so the only way to make other ends meet and pay the bills was to pick cans from trash bins. And you guys might call it like dumpster diving, but that's what we did. So in middle school, I stopped picking cans because I was really ashamed and embarrassed of picking cans. And at the same time, my father went into the monastery, which is like a temple. So he went into the monastery because he wanted to rid himself of alcohol, drug abuse, as well as gambling and abusing his family and children mentally and physically. And he also went in the monastery to study Theravada Buddhism. So when my father went into the monastery and my mom and I would visit him, we would sit down on the floor. I don't know if you guys can see me. So you'd have to like sit down sort of like in semi-lotus pose, right? And your 2 hands have to go like this together, and it has to touch your lips. And you have to sit at least 5 feet away from him, and you can't stare at him in the eye because it's rude to stare, and I can't touch him, especially for females. We can't touch the monk. He is called Venerable Ram Toy. And when he came back home, he taught us certain principles of Buddhism, like not to cheat, steal, lie, and basically love your community, love your people, and the people around you. And to me, my father is this beautiful Apsara, mystical Cambodian goddess. It's a nice canvas painting. Everybody can see it? Yeah. Oh, let me show the tellers. Hey, tellers. So you guys might think it's strange, why am I calling my father a goddess? To me, gods and goddesses exist as one people. There's no sex. And he is an amazing person that took his family from a genocide and did everything that he could to gain money and make money and send it to Cambodia to build schools and temples as well. So before my father died, and he died 10 years ago from lung cancer, because he actually made a field of tobacco in Cambodia and started like smoking that stuff every day. And so it's funny to me, but before he died, we had to learn a chant. And there was this chant that was so beautiful. Before I went to school and before I went to bed, and you have to sit down again. And there's basically a picture of like a Theravada Buddhist, like a monk in front of you. And you have to do this again as well. And the chant goes, Sama Sampato Pateng Araneng Kachami, Sama Sampato Pateng Araneng Kachami, Sama Sampato Pateng Araneng Kachami. So my father was that to me, like love, peace, and happiness, and his chant always was embedded into my heart. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jonas Spector, and this is my story about my experience during the dark time. I walked up the snowy path through the doors of the school, and I was greeted by the assistant principal, a nice lady who came up to me and asked me, "Trivs du här?" Do you understand what she asked me? No. I missed it too. She was speaking Swedish. This was 10 years ago, and I'd traveled thousands of miles from home here in Minneapolis to go live in a folk school, learning Swedish, my mother's tongue. She grew up in Sweden and moved to the States later. So I spent the winter at this folk school in northern Sweden, close up to the Arctic Circle, way far up in northern Sweden. And this was during the winter, so that means that it was very dark. Like the sun didn't come out until afternoon, and then sometimes not even really at all. So I was on my own, but I had my teachers, like Malin, my arts and crafts instructor. Now, Malin was a tough, woodsy northern Swede, a Norrlander, as they call themselves. And she led me out into the woods with her Siberian husky dog by her side and a sharp knife in her hand. We were going to harvest birch bark. So she led me out into the woods looking for a nice tree to go carve the bark with the knife like this. We got it, brought it back to the school, and with a little pair of scissors, I cut and wove this little birch heart. See? Well, I think it turned out okay. So I brought that back to my dorm room and set it down on the table and thought to myself, now what? This was the end of the school week. It was Friday evening, and I'd already cross-country skied through the woods, practiced my jump shot in the gym 100 times. So I decided just to walk back into the school and walk and see what was going on there. Well, it was very quiet. And all throughout the school, there were candles and lights. You see, Swedes love candles. And that kind of got me thinking, well, so do Jews. And seeing all the candles made me think of my family back home, thousands of miles away, back in Minneapolis, and getting ready to celebrate the Jewish Sabbath, Shabbat, which is basically welcoming in a time of rest and reflection, the end of the hectic week. So I thought of my mother standing at the head of the table, lighting the candles, singing the blessing over the candles. My brothers asking for peace in the heart, in the home, and in the world. My father giving his blessing to my brothers, putting his hand on their heads, saying, "May you be who you are, and may you be blessed in all that you are." And I realized I missed them. I was a little homesick, you see, and I missed my blessing. Or so I felt, but blessings travel far, I think. So I went back to my dorm room and sat at the desk, reading for a little while. Then I looked at the heart that I'd made. And then I looked out the window at the still woods and just sat there and listened for a while, for a long time. It's very, very quiet. Winter. And then I realized that I'd stayed up all night. And it was morning. So I waited for the sun to come out. And then I remembered, but that was fine. I didn't have anything too much to do the next day. It was a weekend. So the next day, I walked back into the school on campus to go hang out with my classmates that were around, and the assistant principal, once again, approached me and greeted me and asked me again in Swedish, "Trivs du här?" She was asking me, "Are you getting along here?" And I thought for a moment, and then I replied, "Ja, jag trivs här. I'm getting along." Thanks for listening.
Now, one of the world's great storytellers in the English language is Shakespeare. I think he used too many words, but he said a thing or two about your craft. You have something you'd like to read from Shakespeare, William Shakespeare.
I long to hear the story of your life, which must captivate the ear strangely.
I'm going to think about that. Well, Maren, thank you very much. And we have one more show of good storytellers.
All right.
We'll see you then.
Okay.
Maren Hinderly can be reached at marenhinderly.com. The Hennepin History Museum lives at hennepinhistory.org. Democratic Visions is handcrafted by volunteers through Southwest Community Television and Bloomington Community Access Television. Democratic Visions can be seen on select cable access systems and on our YouTube channel. This is Carol Sundstrom.